what the Supreme Court is saying is that it's better to have 50 different small countries than one big one. That's essentially what these cases are all about, because no one is stopping and saying, okay, let's put a check on Alabama because it's coming up with the most restrictive abortion laws in the country that make it almost impossible for any woman to have an abortion. If you're in that state, you're essentially screwed unless you can afford to travel. And who are the people in the demographic most likely to afford to travel? Wealthy white women, right? So every law that's being passed has an out for the wealthy. You can move to a different state, or you can go to a different state if you need something. Okay, you can, move to a better district to get your kids to a nicer school, or you can, be Felicity Huffman and pay $15,000 and get 2 weeks in prison. Meanwhile, African American mothers who put their babysitter's address because they want their kids to go to a better kindergarten are in jail for 5 years, right? This is why, even in the federal system, things that are supposed to apply equally to everyone do not. Okay. And so if the federal system that's supposed to be covering everyone is really broken, then imagine how disjointed we all are as states. And why do I say that? Because it's really more important than ever for people to get motivated on a grassroots level. People of color have to mobilize and have to make their voices heard. And you don't start with the top, in my opinion. Anything that needs real sustainable change, you have to start by changing the foundation, right? And the foundation is that, it's really hard for Black people in America to vote because they have, voting sites really far from where poor people would live, or they have all these ID requirements that they don't tell people about in advance. The way to combat that is to take back control of the local communities. What does that mean? It means going to every single town meeting. It means going to every single thing that is going to impact a decision. Because if local council people start realizing, hey, you know what? Every single time we have a meeting, this constituency is there and they're being really loud about what they want. And if we don't give them that, then they're not going to vote for us, right? So then what happens? If we win at a mayor level or at a city level, then whoever's running for governor takes note and said, oh, wait, the minority population in that city actually had a real impact on who won. So now we have to start listening to the minority community there. And if a governor does that, then a senator would look at that and say, hey, first it started with the town, now it's like in the city, now they've got the governor. US senators have to pay attention to minorities. But everyone making noise at the top, it's kind of like wanting to get into a club and you're just like number 10,000 in line. Like everyone wants to get in there. Everyone wants to be the voice that really impacts the national party and the national news and the national system. But really, what we need to do is focus on what's going to have the most immediate impact on our lives. We need better residential districts, obviously, so that, Western unions and liquor stores and, laundromats aren't the only things in certain communities, and you don't live in like a food desert where it's impossible for you to get fresh fruit from your family. Like, these are the kinds of things that we need to start working on a local level. President Trump or President Warren, whoever is president in 2020 is not going to fix your neighborhood. They're just not. And so I think it's way past due time, because the way Charlottesville got to where it was because they mobilized on a local level. White nationalists are mobilizing on the local level. They are taking over their town halls. They are taking over, their local elections. And that's getting them higher and higher through state elections, through federal. So the only way to combat that is, like, I think a lot of times when we have, woke movements or, movements that were really trying hard to, get some improvement in people's lives, it's great. But on the other hand, you're kind of like aiming high without having a foundation to build on to get you to the level of vocal power that you need to be at. We need to show collectively that we can get our neighborhoods running the way we want them to be run before we're taken seriously as a constituency. Because right now, the only time brown people are spoken to is when they're pandered to by elected officials or people who want office to say, don't worry, we're the ones who are going to take care of you. We're the ones who really see your plight. We're the ones who really understand what you need. Even though, what have you done for me before you even started running? Not much. You know, whatever your record wasn't enough for you to show, by and large, that you were a substantial contributor to positive changes in local neighborhoods. Kamala Harris has put a lot of black people in jail, and Joe Biden was also someone who was a big proponent of putting black people in jail. These two people are completely different generations, are different genders, have completely different views, and yet, because of where they're starting, they think that, you know, they have the sole answer when they haven't really gotten down in the dirt and figured out what it's going to take to fix communities from the ground up. That's one of the reasons why I thought Barack Obama's experience as a community organizer was very important, because we need more of that. And obviously, if he started from the foundation and he learned how to grassroots organize, he learned what it took to get a community to come together to make improvements. And through that, that is what got him a higher profile little by little, you know? So it's not, I think personally for me, a lot of the times I just want to start at the ending. I want to know everything that I'm supposed to know. When I work out, I already want to be able to do 100 squats and 100 lunges and 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and then still be ready to, you know, run 10 miles and drink a kombucha. Obviously, I am not in any position to do any of those things. And so I beat myself up and I'll be like, okay, instead I'll sit down and I'll watch television, because it just seems so overwhelming to have the ability to do all of that, if you get overwhelmed by all there is to do, you don't start. And I think that that's what's happened in brown and black communities across the country. There is so much to be done. It's institutionalized racism at every single level of the institution. Education, there's institutionalized racism. In employment, blacks and women of color are paid far less. In Hollywood, everyone is ranting and raving and saying Jennifer Lopez has had the best performance of her career. And if she does, then that's great. But let's look at the roles that have made Jennifer Lopez famous. She's playing a stripper. She's played a crooked cop. She's played a maid. She's played, you know, like the only time she ever was a successful woman, she said on camera that she was really Italian. She's never really, other than Selena, and at the very, very beginning of her career, she's never ever positively portrayed Hispanic women as anything other than a stereotype. They might be more complex stereotypes. But for example, in her other movie before this one, Second Acts, right? She played a woman who faked her entire resume. And so while the whole country is going on and on about, you know, immigrants taking jobs and not being qualified for the jobs that they're taking, here comes Jennifer Lopez essentially coming up with propaganda and saying, yeah, I have street smarts, but I didn't have it to go get an education in the first instance, right? Like, so there are negative messages that we're getting all of the time and that we have to counteract all of the time. But instead of getting overwhelmed and instead of thinking there's nothing that we can do, just remember that there are things that we can do to make our immediate lives a little bit better, and that's by getting more involved with our communities. I'm going to take a super fast break, and then we'll be right back. Now we're back. Hi, guys. It's Theresa. Back. We are going to have a little bit of fun talking about mental health. Yay! So, one of my favorite shows is a show that I actually just discovered. I haven't been a fan for years, but thanks to Netflix, I have become introduced to the show Lucifer. And the premise of the show is that the devil was sent to hell after starting a rebellion against his father, God. And he thought that that was an unfair punishment, and he never saw himself as evil. He just thought his role was to punish evil. And so he decides to take a vacation and say, I'm not going to punish people that way anymore. I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to get a therapist. And it's one of the funniest shows to me that I've seen in a really long time, because the things that Lucifer goes through, he's kind of a child, but in an adult's body. And what I mean by that is that he doesn't have a lot of emotional intelligence. And so what the show actually does a really good job of doing is kind of, at the end of every episode, Lucifer goes through an emotional growth, and it's like, oh, you can't, run away from your feelings, or hey, you can really, do something positive for somebody and not have it be like that you're weak, and those kinds of things. And every episode's like a new lesson. And for me, the funniest scenes are when he's in the therapist's office. So I took 2 little clips to share with you guys, just as an example of what I'm talking about. And these clips are from basically Lucifer broke a deal that he made with his father, God, and he's freaking out about it, and he's trying to distract himself.
Hey guys, love these. And I've never understood these. Are they just decorative, or are they for juggling? I mean...
Yeah, you seem very distracted today.
Oh, really?
I love that.
Sometimes when we're in crisis, we create distractions for ourselves, also known as barriers to facing our deepest fears.
Oh, sorry, right, this is the part where you, dissect my deep psychological wounds. The emotion-charged gong show of a childhood divorce who may or may not have broken a deal with his dad by allowing his mum to stay on Earth.
Yeah, I love that. And so the point of that clip was to show that he didn't understand that sometimes when we are in crisis and we don't want to deal with different issues, we come up with different ways to distract ourselves. On the TV show, it was super obvious. He was just playing with his phone. But how many times in life do we, on a regular basis, distract ourselves with things that really aren't important because we're afraid to confront real issues and real feelings that we have? And one of the things that I think has come across to me, not just through the show, but through personal therapeutic work that I've been doing on myself is the idea of building the foundation and starting from the very, very bottom. You can't solve a problem until you know what's causing the problem. And I think a lot of the times for mental health issues, you try to solve the problem without really understanding what's causing it. And that's just kind of like putting tape on a hole in the wall when it really needs spackle. And so one of the things that I really enjoy about this show is the fact that they put a lot of attention on characters learning what it means to identify their emotions and to talk about them. And it's so weird because I think for myself and most of the people that I, know, everyone has an upbringing that wasn't perfect because our parents weren't perfect. And that's kind of how generational trauma works. If your dad was an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic, and then maybe you don't become an alcoholic, but you start dating alcoholics. And so there's always like things roll downhill and roll generation to generation. And what I've noticed is when you stop and you try to think about what the pattern is, for me personally, I was never taught to identify what I was feeling. I was always taught stiff upper lip, keep it to yourself, just move forward. We have things to do. There's no looking back. There's no processing anything that you've gone through. And Hollywood does a really good job of saying that's the way you're supposed to be. Like Man on Fire is one of my favorite movies, but we have Denzel Washington being like really stoic and really emotionless and just trying to, hit the bad guys and all these things. But that's not realistic because that's a 2-hour movie. And in day-to-day life, I feel like people think it's cheesy or it's corny or it's weak to try to get in touch with your emotions. But the offset of that is you have them anyway, and they're going to reveal themselves one way or the other. So if you don't have the intellectual capacity to identify what it is that you're feeling and know how to address that feeling, then you do other things. You act out, you overeat, you drink too much, you date bad guys, because you have all these jumbled feelings and you don't know how to deal with them. And that's what causes different addictive behaviors and different behavioral disorders, right? And it's like our bodies and our nervous systems actually need love to function. I mean, I don't know if you guys have heard, but this is like a very famous study that was done years and years ago. But babies who were just left unheld, they were fed and their diapers were changed, but they were never held. They just died from lack of love and lack of being held. Like, babies and children need to be nurtured because they need to have something up against them to build their sense of self. If you're kind of just in free fall and you don't really know where the ground is or where the ceiling is, you don't know about yourself. You don't know where your boundaries are. And that's what parents provide to their kids. They kind of provide like a boundary and say, oh, this is this person. This person is here for me. I'm safe because this person is here. And this person is validating the things that I'm feeling. And if they're validating me, then I must be real. And if I must be real, then I must be enough, right? Those are the things that a lot of us don't learn as kids because we don't want to stress out our parents. Our parents got a lot going on. You know, sometimes parents go to their kids with their problems and the kids feel like there's no room for them to express what they have going on, so they quash it. And I think that one of the things that's coming out more and more, especially in our community, I know Taraji P. Henson has started a mental health foundation. Common just came out with a book talking about his therapeutic journey and the different work that he's done and how love has become a really powerful emotion for him. And it's kind of, you know, minority communities, and especially the Black community, the whole generational trauma of that community is that despite every single horror that could possibly befall a human being, they had the strength deep down to keep going. And that strength was carried down during the Civil Rights Movement, during Jim Crow, and to present day when Blacks are at every possible disadvantage that you can be at, and those disadvantages are manufactured. It's not like Black people are less intelligent than white people. When Black people create, you know, their own community that's self-sufficient, it gets bombed, like in, you know, Black Wall Street. So there are lots and lots of examples of progress being snatched away. The housing crisis, right? All of those people who bought homes that they couldn't afford, they were targeted for crappy loans with high interest rates and were given more money than the bankers knew. But they didn't do that to white people. They did that to Black and brown people, so that when the housing bubble burst and all those mortgage-backed securities failed, the majority of people who lost their wealth were Black and brown people. And so after the housing crisis, an entire generation's worth of wealth has been stripped because that's how much money Black and brown people lost, right? So we as a people have to be resilient, and we have to be able to face these setbacks, and we have to be able to keep moving forward. But in so doing, I think that there's a sense that acknowledging an emotion, acknowledging that it's hard, acknowledging that it's sad, acknowledging that it's hurtful, acknowledging that you're angry becomes a stigma because you have to show that you don't let the outside world affect you. But biologically, there's no getting around the fact that the world affects you. We all have nervous systems. Our brain is connected to our spine. There are thousands of little, like, you know, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but no, I know what I'm talking about. But I'm saying, like, everything that we do is connected. And my point is, if you're in a car accident, the stress of that car accident is going to impact your body. That's why people feel like jittery for a really long time, even after the danger is past, is because their body hasn't registered the fact that they're safe. That's why people get into the fight or flight response, right? Because, our brains were developed to learn how to run away from danger or how to hide from danger, but our bodies don't always know that there is no danger, that it's actually all in our mind. And so being aware of what's going on in your mind, being aware of the emotions that you're feeling, that's really the foundational work. And sometimes for me personally, like I'll be in my therapist's office and we're just like, she's like, what are you feeling? And I have no vocabulary for it yet. Like there are so many feelings that I've probably had in the past, but I don't know how to express it, or I don't know, whether or not there's more to it than what I initially am just feeling. You know what I'm saying? So it's complicated, and it's really, really hard to get in touch with you and to become clean with yourself and to own the flaws that you have, but look at yourself kindly and not be like, wow, you're so X, Y, and Z because you have this flaw, but to recognize, okay, developmentally, there was no other way for me to go. Developmentally, given my background, given the treatment that I received, given the treatment that I didn't receive and the love I didn't receive, there was no other way for me to become Theresa other than what I am now. But the part of it when it becomes your job then to undo all the bad stuff, you know what I'm saying? To unlearn all the bad habits and to learn new habits and to learn how to build healthy relationships and to learn how to feel in touch with your emotions so that you can control your emotions and you can have productive conversations with people without exploding or, saying things that you're going to regret later. There's a mastery that I think we all need to work on, and it's mastering ourselves. And I think a lot of times when you don't want to look inward, that's when the outward stuff goes on. That's when the gossip starts, and that's when we sit down and we watch The Real Housewives, and that's when I sit down and I watch Lucifer, because someone else's world is easier to deal with than mine. And so when we focus on other people and we focus on what others are doing, really the thought that we have to have is, what is it about my life that's so hard that I don't want to look at? And that's the real self-exploration that I think people really need to start doing in order to live healthier lives. It's something that I've tried to do. It's something that's like an ongoing process because, if you spend 30 years with faulty wiring, neuroplasticity does allow you to rewire your brain and allow you to build better habits, but it takes a long time. It takes a while to get your brain from one track to the next in order for you to move forward with your life, So sometimes, and they always say progress is not linear. It's not going to be like, oh, I've had this epiphany and I figured it out that no one else's opinion matters, just mine. And as long as I'm okay with who I am and I'm secure in who I am, because anyone watching this can be thinking any number of things about me. But as I sit here, I have no idea what anyone's thinking about me. And no one's thought process is affecting my ability to speak right now. So regardless of what anyone thinks about me, it doesn't matter. If you like me, great. If you don't, whatever. That's a confidence that comes with time. And it comes with feeling enough of a whole person and saying, I'm okay just as is, even with the work that I still have to do. That's a place I hope we all can get to, because when you're more focused on yourself rather than the outside world, life is just more peaceful. And you actually realize a lot of the things in your world that you've been neglecting, right? Maybe you've been neglecting your health because you drink too much because you're really stressed. Maybe you have gained weight because you're eating emotionally. Maybe you used to be an athlete, but you've become really sedentary. Or maybe it's a combination of all of them. Maybe you gamble. Maybe you have sexual proclivities. Like, there's all these different ways that we act out to avoid what's going on inside. And it's kind of like clearing the gutters out of a house. Like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tedious. It's going to be probably really gross at points. But at the end of the day, it's necessary so that you don't ruin your roof. And that's kind of like therapy. And I'm going to show one more clip of Lucifer because, like a kid, his response to therapy is a lot like a kid because he only gets the surface and he doesn't always get like the underneath message until the end of the episode. So this is one more clip where he has learned the benefits of distracting yourself.
And that's not like you.
Well, turns out Mum's a peach.
And the deal with your dad.
To send Mum home? What, you think I'm scared of him or something?
I think you're trying to avoid the unpleasantness of conflict.
Hold on. So, you're saying that distraction is a way to avert your problems?
No.
Ergo, the more I distract, the less I worry.
No, I did not say that.
We didn't need to, Doctor. I just did, and it's bloody brilliant. Right.
Where are you going?
Distraction calls. It really is a breakthrough, thank you.
Sure.
I love this show. And that was so funny. He's like, yeah, distraction is a good way to make sure that I don't have to deal with this problem and I don't get myself upset. Great. That's kind of like the before. And then the after is I actually have to understand why it is that I, number one, broke this promise, how I'm feeling about breaking the promise, what I'm worried about my father's reaction is going to be to breaking that promise. Those are all the things that have been on his mind by the end of the episode. And that's when he understands that him distracting himself isn't helpful because at the end of the day, the problem is still there. It's like when you go on a bender after, a long day of work because your boss was an asshole. Tomorrow, your boss is still going to be an asshole and then the bender left you with a hangover. So it's very hard. It's very challenging, but, definitely confronting your feelings and understanding them and being able to identify them has been very helpful to me in at least, learning more about myself and learning more about what makes me tick and what my triggers are and the things that I still need to work on and the things that show I've actually come a really long way. And I'm proud of the fact that I've come a really long way because I've had those moments where you just lay in bed and not that you don't want to get out, like you physically can't, it's just too much. Or, I've had those moments where you just feel a lot of self-pity and a lot of why doesn't anyone love me because I'm single in this moment? I think a lot of women go through those things. And what you realize is it's a joke when they say, yeah, your mom didn't love you enough. But sometimes, yeah, your mom didn't love you enough. And your nervous system got wired differently. It got wired to be hungry for love and to settle for potato chips when what you really deserve is a steak dinner, right? That's why men and women get into unfulfilling relationships and they hang in there because something is better than nothing. And I think in the past, especially in college and early on when I was just kind of getting out into the world, I had never been to therapy and was a little bit of a mental mess because at the time, my distraction was education. My distraction was working. My distraction was getting straight A's and helping my family and taking care of my brother and busy. And keeping my mind occupied was the way that I dealt with things. But all the insecurity, all of the, doubt and all of the self-dislike, it has to come out some way. And if I'm not talking about it or if I'm not realizing it, then what do? Is I get into what became in college a really abusive relationship, physically and emotionally. And, now I'm at a place where, I'll be home and I'm I'm really glad no one else is here right now. I'm totally fine being alone. I like my own company. I would love someone to help me pay the bills, but it's not necessary. It's not a reflection on me anymore. It's more of where I am in my life, and that's not a positive or negative. It's just how I am and who I am right now. So I definitely encourage you guys. I know, in the past I've brought DBT books out, and I've tried to explain different ways in which you can slow down your thought process and deal with things. No one's perfect. I know I have not been perfect. I have a short fuse, but I used to have a much shorter fuse. And so what some people consider a short fuse on me is actually like a really medium to long fuse. So I've come a long way, and I'm looking forward to, continuing my therapy journey. It's very expensive. It's very tedious. But I'm feeling a lot better than I have. And, the last, I want to say 4 years, and it's been that long, like 2015 to present, were extremely difficult. I've lived in DC, Maryland, and New York in that time. I've had 3 jobs in that time, and I've had a lot of personal turmoil in that time. And so in a way, things are kind of settling down, but also settling down because I'm not internalizing bad behavior as a reflection of me. I'm looking at it objectively and saying that's a reflection on that person, and that doesn't have anything to do with me. And that's a really, really big shift, because in the past it would be, what if I did this and then they would like me? Or what if I was super quiet? Or what if I was more entertaining? Or what if I, was more available? Or what if I did this and what if I did that? Then this person will come back. And the thing about it is that I think guys sense that, and they get, oh, she is just desperate for anybody and anything, so I can just come and go as I please and she'll take it. That's what you project. And in the past, that's definitely what I projected, because it was just that hard to be alone, because I was just really lonely. And now my mentality is a lot different. Like, I don't take it personally when I see things anymore, or I can see things at least with a little bit more clarity. And I am a really, really big believer in accountability. Again, like, if you don't know what the problem is, then you can't solve it. And for me, being accountable means owning what I've done, owning the consequences of what I've done, and also then being able to say, I made a mistake. It doesn't mean that in my completion, I'm a horrible person, but I did make a mistake, and I'm willing to admit that, and I'm willing to own it, and I'm willing to learn from it, and I'm, most importantly, willing to move on, because if you fester and you just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again, you're just making yourself and those around you miserable. And again, I just think a lack of self-awareness, a lack of self-love and self-compassion, these sound like really cheesy concepts. And sometimes they still make me be like, oh, that's so corny. Ugh, I don't even want to talk about that shit no more. But it's necessary. And the fact that it feels weird to be nice to yourself, at least for me, is just indicative. Like, it's a little sad. Like, I shouldn't be this unfamiliar with kindness. I shouldn't be this awkward when someone's trying to connect with me on an emotional level. Like, intimacy and being close are something that is still really difficult for me. It's hard for me to let my guard down, definitely. And that's something that, has gotten better, but also still needs a little bit of work. So, it's all a journey. I've been really happy sharing it with you guys throughout the last year. And I will continue, making little clips and stuff like that. And then if we bring this format back, we'll do it that way. We're going to take one last break, and then I will be right back. It's the last segment of Talking with Theresa. Yay, boo. Piss. I know. So the last segment, comedy. I started this whole thing because I started doing stand-up comedy 3 years ago. I thought it was going to be a lot of fun. And in a lot of ways, it has been fun. And it's also been a learning experience. I've never been stage shy. So that part of comedy wasn't difficult. What is difficult about comedy is a lot of times the cheap joke is being self-deprecating. And I do notice a lot of times comedians get their sets going by knocking their appearance. Oh, I know I look like I work at a TGI Fridays, or, hey, I look like I have like 3 child support payments, or, there's a lot of self-deprecation, because one thing I have learned is that comedians are not healthy people. It takes a really special person to wake up in the morning and say, you know what I want to do tonight? I want to drive an hour so I can talk in front of complete strangers for 5 minutes and hope that I get them to laugh at me. That's not a normal desire, okay? And when I talk about people weren't hugged too much as kids, essentially that's what comics are, because a lot of it is survival, right? Like if you grow up in an environment that's chaotic, there are different ways to survive so that you don't lose your mind. And a lot of kids try to be funny or, use humor as a way to pacify conflict in their home. Like, look at me, mom and dad don't fight because I'm going to be funny now. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when you become an adult, you still need that external gratification, and that's what comedy is. Comedy is trying to find the truth of your life, but saying it in a way that's really funny, that's going to be relatable. But since a lot of it can start off by being self-deprecating, the challenge is to learn how to go deeper, right? So I used to be really self-deprecating when I first started 3 years ago. And my jokes, I noticed I was very down on myself, and I'm like, oh, I'm 37 or 34 at the time. And, this is my life, and my mom is this, and da-da-da-da-da. And it was just one of the things that I kept getting back is that, I was the lonely lawyer. And I just started getting a lot of feedback that at times it was funny, but sometimes it was just morose, and it wasn't coming across the way that I thought it was. And so you have to go deeper. And when I say that is, okay, let's try to find other ways to be funny beyond being mean to myself, right? Like everyone has been mean to me. There's no need for me to go stand in front of strangers and talk badly about myself and get a laugh and reaffirm that belief that's negative, right? Because whether or not you think, oh, it's just a joke, your mind doesn't register that you're just joking. And so you saying, yeah, I suck, don't I? And everyone laughs is going to have a register in your brain being like, yeah, you actually do suck. And that's a good thing for you to keep saying, regardless of whether you get laughs or not. So that's another thing that I've been working on, is just kind of switching gears and still talking about the same issues, but trying not to do it in a way that makes it seem like I'm down about it. More like, isn't it funny the way all these different people can have all their different journeys, and no two journeys are alike. And when I was 18, I thought 30 was old. And I thought by the time I was 30, I was going to be married with a kid and the house and the white picket fence and the dog. And I was going to be in one house, and that was going to be my life. And now I'm 37. I've moved 10 times. Like, it's just like I have no kids. I have no house. And I'm becoming more comfortable with me. And so that's my journey. And that just happens to be how my life is turning out. And then I have a girlfriend of mine who actually went through her entire life, was told by doctors at a really, really young age that she would never be able to have a baby. And then she and her husband decided, you know what, let's just start trying. It's probably going to take like 6 or 7 months, and then we can talk about IVF, if it gets to that point. And they got pregnant on the very first try. And so she was like, I didn't think it was going to work. So holy shit, now I have a baby on the way, So it's just very interesting when you stop and you think, there's no reason to compare yourself to other people because her life and her path were completely different from mine. So the fact that she's my age and just had a baby and I'm my age and don't have any, like, it's not a reflection on either one of us. It's just a reflection of the paths that we've taken. And the funny part is in talking about them in a way that's going to, I mean, this chick, she didn't want to be a lawyer. She didn't want to be an adult. And she definitely never wanted to be a mom. And I was the one who was always like, I love the law. I can't wait to be a domestic housewife. And I want to be like the sultry wife. Like those were all the things I wanted to be. And now she's married with a kid and like is partner at her law firm. And, you know, I'm me and it's okay to be me. And so that's the thing that I'm just going to keep telling myself because it's true. Before we go, I'm going to plug some shows that are coming up in DC. If you're interested in checking out some cool comedy, Anthony Oakes, he used to be on WLVS, Thursday Night Tea with Anthony. He's got a show coming up on October 4th, Smokes and Jokes. So go to Eventbrite for that. That's a really good lineup. He's got Marcel O'Neill, D-Lo, and Rami Mostafavi. That's actually a really good lineup. And then the next show we got for Mr. Anthony. So Ramin, who's on Anthony's show, also has a show at the DC Improv called Couples Therapy. I've done that show before when it was over at the Draft House. It's a really fun show. And basically, you know, you get couple questions from the audience and the comics on stage help give you love advice from their unique perspective. So that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's September 26th. And then every Friday night at the DC Draft House at 10:45 is Attack of the Comics comedy showcase. For my money, it's the best show in the Draft House. And I say for my money because it's free. It's a free show every Friday, and it's actually a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of hip hop music. I'm a big fan of music in general, and it is one of the only shows, if the only show in DC, that makes music as important as the comedy. So like the comics come up to great music. Sometimes if a song's being referenced in the set, then the music will start playing on the set, and it's just a really fun time. And so that's every Friday. I might be there down the line. Who knows? So yeah, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for the feedback that I've gotten and for listening. And I am sure that I will catch you in other media forms. But for now, take care. Bye.